pretty impressive just how many games have been played on the platform. And here we go, grand finals between Cheap and Eddie. We'll see who's able to sort of make it out on top here. And yeah, immediately both players starting very aggressively. Cheap opting to go for a bit of a floating T-spin there, which doesn't really work out entirely cleanly. But the very nice sort of cave build there from Cheap as well, and able to sort of clear up the small mess that he made. And it's already looking pretty impressive here from both players. Eddie definitely always seems to be able to get through that garbage in a very impressive and quick fashion. But right as I say that, Eddie having trouble getting through. But as I say that as well, Eddie just got a perfect clear on Cheap because he was KO'd. So it did seem like a little bit of a blessing in disguise, but Eddie did misdrop a lot after that instead of using that perfect clear to his advantage. And it looks like that's going to cost him a lot here. Cheap already sending 40 more lines than Eddie at this stage in the game. And I think that KO number is very reflective of that as well. And yeah, we'll see if Eddie's able to sort of mount a comeback or anything to sort of get back in here. But it looks like Cheap is already running away with it. Look at those creative setups. Nice S prop there, nice S prop T spin there, showing his sort of creativity in building, his yakinery, if you will, and it's definitely showing here. Cheap playing a very impressive game. Eddie definitely not slacking or playing uncleanly at all, except for that misdrop. Just Cheap just seems to be piling on that garbage so quickly, and it's just very hard as a player to just deal with that in an effective way. And yeah, Eddie trying to get through all of what Cheap's sending, but if we look at the sort of line sent here, 250 sent by Cheap, that's the most in this tournament so far, or in the semis and finals at least, because we don't know how those how the quickfire rounds have been. I don't think everyone has watched them, but 100 more lines sent from Cheap, looking as dominant as his first game against JF. So we'll see if Eddie is able to make those second place adaptations to go into first place. But we'll see if that's going to happen here in game 2. Alright, and here we go. Cheap, misdropping his little fractal there. And we'll see if he's able to still execute that in time. Does look like he can, and it does turn out to be a very nice spike there against Eddie, who opts not to go for his setup that he had prepared there. Cheap still playing very aggressive here, and I think Eddie sort of lost momentum by choosing not to go for that setup. Um, and I think, yeah, Cheap does seem to be gaining, like, again, he did misdrop very early on. It's a little bit of unclean stacking as I say that too. But we'll see if he's able to get not only down to his garbage, but yeah, as I say that too, Eddie having a little bit of trouble here with his stacking. Very uncharacteristic of a grand final set to see both players misdropping a good deal, but maybe the pressure's getting to them. It's always easier to be in the sort of critiquing seat here as a commentator compared to sort of in the hot seat while you're playing. But both players back to very clean, quick stacking. We'll see if Cheap is able to pile on enough pressure to sort of capitalize on Eddie's high height here, but it doesn't look like it. Both players playing a lot cleaner again, and we see a little bit of a down stack combo there from Cheap. Eddie opting to go for a very risky T-spin triple that's eyepiece dependent, and that's going to cost him that first KO of the set, of the game rather. And now Eddie, it looks like he might need 2 entire KOs or to gain the line lead back with a KO. But with 20 extra lines sent by Cheap, it's not looking like that's going to happen. So unless Eddie can pull something out in the last second here, it looks like, and here we go. Eddie again, very high up here. That's looking already like able to downstack actually quick enough, barely. Cheap misdropping his T-spin in the last second, but Eddie unable to capitalize in time because it just really did happen at the last second. And that's 2-0 for Cheap, but that game was definitely a lot closer than the first. Eddie definitely making some adaptations there. And alright, here we go. Eddie already a little bit of unclean stacking there, requiring a soft drop, which isn't optimal per se. And now going, oh, a little bit of uncleanness here, and Cheap definitely immediately capitalizing here, able to go for all these risky builds here. Another fractal sent there with 2 T pieces in a row, which is always very satisfying and acts as an amazing spike. And we definitely see that happening against Eddie right now, where he's just kind of getting spiked into oblivion. Cheap has already sent almost 4 times the lines that Eddie has. So we'll see if Eddie's sort of able to come back in time here. But yeah, as I say that, Cheap a little bit high up here, but it looks like he's able to sort of downstack with a slightly superior speed. And Worldwide Combos is definitely a speed-focused game, where if you're faster, you can just have the aggression and play sort of the aggressive cards in the sense that you can be the one that determines the flow of the game. And it looks like Cheap is definitely capitalizing on that fact. Just look at that aggression from him in terms of especially the line sent and the sort of builds he's going for. I haven't seen Eddie go for an STSD or a fractal or anything risky of the sort, and it's definitely it's not exactly top player privilege per se, but it's just the fact that Cheap is able to go that little bit faster. It means that he can commit to slightly riskier options, and that's definitely what's happening here. Cheap on a massive tear here, 200 lines sent, Eddie's 115 and 5 KOs, a dominant game for sure on his part. So this game is already looking like a wrap. Eddie just has to make sure that he can keep his mental game in check and stay in it for the next couple games. But these couple misdrops here do not make it look like he will be able to. And yeah, but they both already know this game is over. And that game 4 is going to be where Eddie has to make something happen. And all right, here we go. Cheap and Eddie, game 4 here. Apologies for the fact that my chat died for a second. I hope the stream didn't also die for a second, but hopefully that's all for the best, as how that ended up. We'll see if Eddie here is able to make the necessary adaptations. But again, Cheap with a super clean stack, and Eddie he's just covering his garbage and unable to downstack it in time. And again, it's still these risky options that Cheap is going for here, which are making everything work. Uh, we'll have to see if Cheap is actually able to reach his garbage here. It does, and just in time. Was about to eat a KO there, but now is downstacking quickly all that garbage. And Eddie is as well. So they're both pretty low on the field, but as I say that, Eddie eats a spike from Cheap and gets up very high. But now he's downstacking all that very quickly and effectively. And Cheap with the 1 KO and with a couple extra lines in a good position to win this game. But this is definitely a lot more doable than a lot of the deficits JF faced. So we'll see if Eddie is able to exploit a misdrop that Cheap makes, or capitalize on a small error or an aggressive option that Cheap just greeds a little bit too hard for. But Eddie going for a little bit of a foul floating T-spin there. And we'll see if he's able to sort of get through all this garbage in time here. But the cheese was too cheesy for him, and he's not able to downstack that quickly enough. Opting for the T-spin single there. And yeah, Cheap is just still playing out of his mind here. Very quick, very effective. And we'll see if Cheap again, still going for these very risky options, even when he has the lead, opting to go for these especially risky options here. But it does work out in his favor, and that's 4-0 to Cheap. We'll see if he's or if Eddie is able to make anything happen here. But right now, it's looking pretty rough for Eddie. But we'll see. And here we go. Game 5. The potential finale here. Eddie will see if he can keep his Eddie in the game. But right as I say that, immediately right off the gate, Cheap just like asserting his dominance almost with that sort of aggression. But as I say that, a little bit of a fatal misdrop there for him. Oh, but look at that fix. That is an extremely creative and impressive fix there from Cheap. Able to get out of that misdrop not only with style but also with effectiveness. And that's really what isolates Cheap here as an especially well-versed player and top player here, is just how he can make the stuff happen, and that he can make it happen so fast and so creatively that like you wouldn't even believe it. And you definitely see that here with that again, a little bit risky here, Cheap, especially risky when it doesn't seem like he needs to be. And but Cheap does still have the line lead by a couple lines here, but it's still a very close game here. We'll see if Eddie is able to downstack through all this before Cheap can spike him. But yeah, making a couple more risky decisions himself, Eddie is, which I'm actually a big fan of as a commentator, not only because it makes the match more interesting, but also because it seems to be working out better for him. And still tied in KOs, only 5 lines separating the two players with 30 seconds left to go. This is an extremely intense match here, and we'll see if Cheap is able to run away with it or not. Uh, it it does look like Cheap able to get a big KO there, and forces Eddie into a big misdrop there. We'll see if Eddie's able to get through that in time and able to give Cheap another KO in time. But Cheap is still playing very clean here, definitely not succumbing to the pressure. But as I say that, Cheap eats a KO here, and everything is back in it. There you go. That's the game. Tied on KOs for a very close final game there, but Cheap with the win in the end. Also, I think my chat died, which is unfortunate. But congratulations to both Eddie and Cheap. Eddie played his heart and soul out. You could see that. But I think the nerves just didn't seem to be with him on this day. And it just didn't seem to work out for him. Cheap coming away, another amazing performance from him after especially the second place in the huge tournament. And yeah, winning this one. Cheap definitely showing why he is top 5 on this website. And yeah, thank you guys for watching. I appreciate it. And I'm sure Noel does. Uh, please consider also really, like, I know I was messing around about it before, but like Noel works so hard on this site, guys. So you should really drop a follow, especially for him, because he definitely deserves it. And I think on that note, I do believe a Tetris Friends tournament is happening soon. So I can't wait to, can't wait to see how that goes. But yeah, either way, thank you for watching. And I hope to be commentating the next match until I get fired.